Okay, so now I'm introducing Dr. Kamel Sherif, the Dean of American University in Cairo. So he's gonna talk about digital transformation and the implication on the economies in emerging markets, role of collaboration and innovation capital in MENA countries. Dr. Kamel Sherif, thanks a lot, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and I just want to make sure that you can hear me well. And I'm going to share my screen. And again, I want to make sure that you can see my screen. So thank you so much, Hind. It's a great pleasure to be with you today at the Middle East North Africa Conference of Information Systems, and very delighted to connect with good old friends like yourself, like Ali-Elquammah, Abbas Tarhini, and many others, Antoine Harfouche, and glad to also meet I should say, Salwa. First and foremost, I want to wish you all that, and your loved ones and your families and your neighbors and your friends, to stay well and in good health. I very much like the theme of the conference, from close to open innovation, and my talk will be sort of covering that issue based on my research for the past 30 plus years. And Hele, I just want to say that I've been fortunate to be part of the EIS community since 1995, so celebrating this year 25 years as well, focusing primarily on ICT for development. And that includes obviously the impact on individuals, organizations, and society, addressing the issues of the betterment of society. And that can never happen without diversity and inclusion. So let me get into the talk. And as Hind mentioned, it's digital transformation and the impact, obviously, in light of whatever happened over the past 10 months. Let me just go back to this guy. Let's call it the guru of management, the father of management, whatever we want to call him. But are we 24 years plus late in transformation? He actually back then thought that buildings, not just colleges, buildings are obsolete already. He was looking at technology and how it can transform society, but also he was looking at the big picture, not just connectivity. In 2005, Thomas Friedman wrote his book, famous book, The World is Flat. I was actually interviewing Tom Friedman some 45 days ago, and I told him, listen, after COVID hit, the world not just became flat, but also dysfunctional, and in many ways disrupted in no time. Tom had said in 2005 that anything could be digitized and outsourced to the cheapest and to the smartest. He came back in 2016 and he said, we're living the age of acceleration of technology. We're using it 24/7. And how can we cope with it? Can we cope with it? Do we have the skills to cope with it? Klaus Schwab in 2016, with his first book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, he said that technology is changing the way we live and the way we deal with each other. 2 years later, in 2018, with his second book about the Fourth Industrial Revolution shaping the future, he goes, it's changing everything. The way we work, the way we communicate, the way we study, the way we shop, and what it means to be human. So let's just stop for 1 second. It did not because of COVID, but it was accelerated because of COVID. We started the transformation the minute we had a computer at home, and that was early 80s. Obviously, this was accelerated big time with the mobility in the 90s, but we've been sort of getting there for 4 decades now. Well, Hariri in 2018 said the merge of infotech and biotech is proving that there will be no boundaries to the prospects for what lies ahead. And that's the notion of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the robotics, data, big data, cloud computing, drones, artificial intelligence, and so on. We've gone through 3 phases. The first, in the 19th century, moving on to the 20th, where it was a move from the industrial big machines, dangerous and so on, moving into the 20th century with the scratching the surface when it comes to automation. And then we hit the 21st century with intelligent systems, whether we call it artificial intelligence or intelligence augmentation. I prefer the latter. Are machines replacing us? Is this the kind of digital transformation we're looking for? Absolutely not. But let's look at the history here. And again, just to remind you that acceleration and change and transformation has been taking place for years. Look at the difference. So forget about the app, forget about the technology or the industry I'm referring to, but it's the acceleration of the use. From 68 days with 50 million people traveling with whichever airline to 19 days. I know it's a game, I know it's an app, but look at the app before and the app before and the app before. These are becoming part of our lives, not just for fun, but for business as well. Machines. And let me share with you a personal experience. Back in 1998, just outside Geneva, next to the airport, I was attending the Internet Summit. That's 1998, 22 years ago. Vinton Cerf, called the father of the Internet, was giving a talk, and he said, you guys are excited that 2 million people are using the Internet? Wait until machines talk to each other. I promise you, I was sitting in that room with probably 1,000 people. It was at the Palexpo facility, which is huge. Everybody thought he was, what is he talking about? It was too early in the morning that he had some sort of not really focused or have an early drink or whatever. But he said it. I never seen Vint since 1998 all the way to November 2019, just before COVID hit. But I was in a smaller room with him, and I told him, listen, you know what, Vint, I was in the same room back in 1998 when you said the machines are talking to each other. I promise you, he looked at me and he said, and probably you were one of those people who thought I was a nutcase. That's exactly was the impression back then. He was right. Today, we're talking 50 billion machines talking to each other. Do we have the leadership to cope with that, to be able to manage the digital transformation? Well, I'll leave you with that. The numbers every 60 seconds of what's happening to us in the world. That's exactly what is happening to us. I don't know, 190 million emails is being sent. So I'm going to talk for probably less than 30 minutes. Just work the math. If every minute 190 million emails are being sent, just see how many emails are going to be sent before I finish my talk. Talk about innovation and acceleration. How many of you have been using that maybe for fun, but also for business? It's been what now, 20 years? Starting with Skype, moving to YouTube, and then to Facebook, and even Twitter, which is the most recent addition. It's been around for about 13 years or 14 years. This is the
Professor Sherif, excuse me for interruption. We missed your screen sharing, if you please.
I'm sorry?
Could you please share the screen?
You can look at his presentation in a different, because I can see him in a small screen and I can see his presentation shared. I don't know why some other participants can't see your presentation. I can see it.
I can see it too. I confirm I can see it.
I can see it too.
They just need to click on the presentation to make it bigger, full screen.
It is full screen to me.
It is full screen, sir, but in Teams, that's as big as it could get in Teams platform.
So shall I?
Sorry, Dr. Sherif, for the interruption. You can continue. Okay. Thank you.
I hope everybody's seeing me and I mean seeing the screen and hitting me well. So look at these innovative business models. They didn't come yesterday or after COVID, but we managed to get along with them. We enjoy them in many ways. I mean, this is stunning. Look at, I mean, Uber with no cars, Airbnb with not a single room that they own, Alibaba with no inventory, Facebook, I call it the continent of Facebook. 26% of the world population are on Facebook. That's a different business model. If I move my hat and move into our DNA as researchers, what are we teaching our kids? What are we teaching our future leaders, our entrepreneurs, the movers and shakers of tomorrow? Are they ready for that transformation with its economic and social aspects. And I love this screen. Who is in charge? Who's the slave here? Us or the technology? Who's in control? That's extremely important. And I'll come into that again in a couple of slides. And then come November 17th, 2019, something happened. So for years, when we spoke about this, disruption, we were talking about the role of ICT in disruption. But then we were hit, first case, November 17th, with an invisible stealth attack, an enemy that affected the lives and livelihoods of millions of people around the world. No discrimination, developed countries, developing countries, emerging economies. And that was a different sort of disruption, unlike what we used to talk about for many, many years. And we got into VUCA until today. Ambiguity, uncertainty, surely we all wanted to be in the same room today. We miss our friends. We miss the normal way we are used to do business, to study, to interact, to communicate. This came as a stealth attack. We were not expecting it, and it moves us into this ambiguity that we still live in. But this is, for me, is an opportune moment, and I want you to keep that thought. As it stands, whatever happened because of COVID, it slowed down economies, affected financial markets, disrupted value chains, and that's extremely important. And everybody's talking about the future of globalization. The future of globalization is not by canceling globalization. The future of globalization, given COVID, is to revisit globalization. Some people call it deglobalization. Some people look at it as inshoring, reshoring, but it has nothing to do with canceling it. It's a different model. Models come and go, but the fact that collaboration, regardless of the industry, is extremely important for the development and the betterment of society. But that also affects diversity, and it also affects inclusivity. But what happened is that the world was in lockdown. Who came and saved the day? Digital transformation. The very same thing that we thought was disrupting us for the past 4 decades. That's exactly what we're doing today. We wouldn't have been able to have that conference without digital transformation. We wouldn't actually have managed to have done anything over the past 10 months, or actually a year now, without digital transformation. But digital transformation should not be perceived as machines and networks and softwares and hardware. It's science, very much affected by management, but it's also art. So what's next? I like the word futurology, and I think business schools around the world should have that department, or a program, or a course, or a seminar. How will the future look like? Well, I promise you, I'm not going to give you answers because I don't have a crystal ball. I'm just like you, learning as we go. How to work differently, how to study differently, how to shop differently, how to connect differently. I'm not sure about how to travel differently because it's a daunting task to travel these days, but how to live differently. The future of learning, we already knew it. We had those pictures before. Didn't come after COVID. Students are becoming more exposed, more knowledgeable, more interconnected, more intelligent. And the role of the instructor, of the researcher, of the professor has to adapt to stay relevant, because their knowledge is out there. What can we add to actually shape up the generations of the future? The future of work, look at the left side of the slide, and the movement of human tasks to be done by machines from 2018 to 2025. Does this mean that we're going to be replaced by a machine? I don't think so. But it means we need a different type of people, different type of education, different type of training, different type of exposure on how to deal with machines, different skills. So we need upskilling and reskilling, but that's not a destination. That's a journey, and it is changing. I'm sorry to tell you that. So we need to keep adapting. And look at the right side of that screen, and I'm sure you had it. And it's changing, by the way. It used to get updated every 5 years. Now it's every 2 years. Because life is changing, and the transformation are taking place on a continuous basis. So people are saying, oh boy, we've been working from home for the past 10 months. I'm sorry, you've been working from home for the past 30 years. I mean, the time when we used to leave the office, go home, and then relax, this was pre having a PC at home. That you have to go back to the early 80s. The time when you had a weekend without checking an email or an SMS or what have you, most recently, relatively, WhatsApp and so on, then you have to go back, what, 10 years, 15 years? So you've been working from home forever, or from a cafe, or from a garden. So it's not just working from home versus working from the office, but it's also working from anywhere. Some people work in the plane, in the car, in the bus, in the train. You're not being replaced by a robot. You're being replaced by someone who understands robots, who understands the machine. Those of you, many of you like myself, who started off using computers in the early 80s, it was difficult. We used to get those manuals. Nobody looked at those manuals. But to install and to uninstall and to use and to understand the application took some time. Nowadays, you don't even need like 2 seconds of introductions. You understand the machine. You control the machine. You manage how to use the machine in actually improving productivity, efficiency, effectiveness, and so on. Technologies have decreased the demand for low-skilled human capital. They do not replace humans, but they increase it for highly skilled ones. So that's what I meant by reskilling, upskilling. And even, by the way, it's so funny that picture, it's been around for many, many years. Now it's how we shake hands with people. So somewhere, somehow, someone knew what's going to happen to us in 2019. I love this. Nobody has a VP for listening, but someone does the listening. Tom Davenport said that back in 2015. You cannot replace that by a machine. Human capital will remain the most important asset in the organization and in society. They can come up with a vision, with aspirations, with empathy, with compassion, with dreams. You cannot codify that. So let's just make it clear that technology is here to help us, but we need to know how to maximize the use of such technology. Again, I love this quote. People know how to take a course, but they need to know how to learn how to learn. The learning process needs to be learned. That's exactly what happened to us post-COVID. We were learning by doing. I mean, in my case, whether with my hat as the dean of the school or with my hat as the president of the American Chamber in Egypt, American Chamber of Commerce, it was a weekend and we moved online in 24 hours. We had to cope with that. It wasn't perfect, for sure, but it worked. We never stopped, not for a day. I was just sharing with my colleagues this morning that from March 15th this year until the day before yesterday, as a school, believe it or not, and trust me, that's the exact figure, we've organized 164 webinars. We would not have done that in normal circumstances, maybe 50 tops. So there are opportunities there, but we need to know how to do it, how to learn to do it. One very important thing next to the human capital, which is the data. So important about the data. Transformation is all about the journey that is based and driven by data. But data has to be institutional to change and to be integrated in the organizational culture. The hard skills are as important as the soft skills. But moving forward as humans, we will thrive when it comes to the soft skills. Some of the hard skills can be and will be better performed by equipments faster. We can still do them, but we always will have a niche when it comes to the soft skills. Let's move to MENA. A huge region, in my mind, with ample potentials. But come 2020, with the economic outlook, it was hit hard. Let me just pause for a second. Globalization and the global economy was not really perfect when COVID hit. So it was going through a fragile moment, which actually led to be growing on a global scale by hardly 1%, with very much limited fiscal and actually monetary policy. But then COVID hit, and to give credit to most, if not all, of the governments in the region, they came up with unprecedented stimulus packages to save the lives and the livelihoods of people. But still, those stimulus packages, because the region was growing by hardly 1%, was even less than the stimulus package offered by other emerging economies, which stands at 3%. We were hardly making 2%. IFIs expect the MENA region to contract by 4 to 5% this year. For some reason, because of the massive investment that were put in the Egyptian economy over the past 4 years, we were doing 6%, we were cut in half, so we are a bit positive, might be 3.6, maybe 3.5, but that is not guaranteed for next year. That is just the repercussions of the developments that were taking place over the past few years. 2021 promises a rebound for the region, 3%, with countries like Jordan, Morocco, Tunisia, and Saudi Arabia all actually will realize decent levels of economic growth, which is fantastic. They will rebound, and I hope the rest of the countries will rebound as well. But these were strong economic implications. Looking forward, how can we come out of this? The crisis, the more it prolongs, the more we have problems. Development, the distribution of an affordable, accessible vaccine is a big issue. I hear nowadays people talking about vaccine passports and vaccine diplomacy, who's going to get the vaccine, who's going to get it first. All these issues will contribute to the global uncertainty and the implication in the region. But there is also a deficit in global collaboration. That's why I'm telling you, globalization should be here to stay, but maybe through a different model. On the MENA, public debt will go from 45% to 60% of GDP, which is huge, the highest ever. And we will see an encore of fiscal stimulus and monetary measures and social policies to mitigate the repercussions of the crisis. Remember, our region is predominantly micro and small and medium-sized enterprises. They need the money to survive, if they can survive. Because one of the important resources for the region, which is the remittances, and don't underestimate that, because in some countries, the remittances of the expats is double or triple the annual aggregate of FDIs received from some of our countries in the region. So remittance is extremely important. That too was hit. The third is human capital, the most important asset. Unemployment rates is a problem. I'm sorry for the extra S. Poverty, people moving from poverty to extreme poverty probably is going to hit 15 to 25 million. And that will contribute to inequality, hopefully in the short term. And the informal sector is not going to help. Finally, the tensions and instability and disputes across the region definitely adds to the mix. But this is the reality picture that we have in the region. Social implications, societal implications, I mean, increased reliance on the internet is definitely a must. Just for you, I hate the term social distancing because I don't think we've been more social over the past 10 months. I think it's more physical distancing. And we're happy that we became more friendly and spending more time with family. Everybody is. Businesses and governments, they will need to look at new modes of operations because we've seen that it can be different. Blended learning is the only way to go moving forward. I said blending, I didn't say online. Is the infrastructure ready? In some countries they are, in some others they're not. How about the digital divide? Some people will suffer, that's for sure. But we also benefit from a region that is overwhelmingly well connected, whether internet or mobility, and it's improving. And I think there will be more improvement in the coming year or so. Can this provide a platform for digital for the transformation into a digital economy? I believe yes. The number of untapped opportunities, the potential out there, far exceeds the potential in many other countries. Human capital will remain the most invaluable assets in society. And I will not, nobody is going to be able to convince me that that's not the most important asset that we have. But these are the facts. As published a week ago, and I'll stop for 2 seconds just to leave you to look at those numbers. Stunning, right? Whether the loss in GDP or working hours, you name it, stock. But we can look at these numbers, have our shoulders down, and be pessimistic. I'm not one of those. I always look at the glass half full. And which way do we really want collectively to go? I think it's the green part of the slide, not the red part of the slide. 2 ways. First, investing in human capital. 420 million people, 6% of the world population, 60% of those are under the age of 30. It's a massive young workforce. 67% of them are wired. They are connected. They speak the same language, yes, with multiple dialects, but we all understand each other. This is an opportune moment. And I'm not trying to just be a dreamer. I'm not. I'm very practical. This is a reality. These are the numbers. Numbers speak for themselves. It's not impressions. Investing in innovation capital, we lack in the region that part. And these are just sample areas where we need to invest. Agriculture, manufacturing, healthcare, entrepreneurship, commerce, trade, banking and finance. And I'll stop here for a second. Financial inclusion. Antoine talked about inclusivity. Financial inclusion. Look at the impact of financial inclusion on the region. I'll give you numbers from Egypt. 100+ million people, less than 14% of the adult population have their money in the bank. Less than 14%. It's one of the lowest rates in the world. Think of if we have only 10 more million people banking their money. What happens? They become part of the economy. We reduce 10 million from the informality of the business in the economy, and it's a different ballgame. The problem is magnified in Egypt, but it's all over the region. The informal sector represents a part and parcel of the economies. But they're informal, call it underground, call it shadow, whatever. And that causes so many other problems that we all know about. Digital transformation can help with that. Investing in innovation capital can help with that. There's no one perfect solution. There's no one size that fits all. And it's continuously evolving. The problems in Egypt are different than Lebanon, are different than Morocco, are different than Syria, are different than the UAE, but we can learn from each other. Because the variations are there, but the basic grounds are the same. Just on November 11th, just under a month ago, I actually hosted the launch of the MENA 2020 Network Readiness Index, which tells you a lot about the region. And I think I'm not going to tell you something you don't know, but just let's put them up front here. And I'm conscious of time. I only have a few minutes left. Approach needs to be holistic. It's not a piecemeal. And that will lead, and I said that already, to some form of digital divide. It's extremely important to create an ecosystem of trust and security. We failed as CIOs and CTOs in the acceleration. COVID-19 managed to do that in a couple of weeks. Upskilling and reskilling of human capital, I repeat it, is extremely important. Let's not forget about the SDGs. Digital transformation can accelerate SDGs. And we will revisit the international cooperation and globalization schemes. The outcome of the Network Readiness Index of this year is positive, which bodes well with the gradual digital transformation taking place. There's still a long way to go. We're still scratching the surface, but we'll get there. And we should not forget about these 17 SDGs. What do you need to do? You need to be creative. You need to be flexible. We are obsessed with our legacies. Let's drop that for a moment. Let's look at talent. Let's look at the future. Let's look at data. Let's look at adapting, at collaboration. I'm not saying remove our legacies. Let's adapt our legacies to move forward. I love this slide. Nobody, by the way, I didn't write this slide yesterday or after COVID. I wrote it probably 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And nowadays, not everybody wears ties because we're sitting at home or working from somewhere else. So from suits to jeans, from banks to fintech, from accounting to blockchain, from whatever we're doing, we need to be guided by innovation. That's very important. Is this the new norm? Probably yes. We don't know how exactly it's going to be, but that's the new norm. We need to be risk takers, creative, obsessed by discovery. Gartner says the biggest problem are always internal, either in society or in the organization. Let's keep an eye on this quadrant: leadership, human capital, innovation, and the organizational culture. I think this is extremely important. Organizational culture, the societal culture, the need to adapt, the drive to adapt. And going back to Peter Drucker, this guy said it all: culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's a journey of continuous improvement, and we need that badly in the region. Churchill's birthday was what, 3 days ago, November 30th. What did he say? It's all about attitude. It makes all the difference. So our attitude in the digital transformation is all about people and relevancy. How do we stay relevant? How do we stay resilient, agile, competitive? And I'll leave you with this slide. So people always talk about change, promote change, push for change, endorse change. But trust me, nobody wants to change. Not me, not you, not anybody else. But what we've seen in 2020 is that people actually do change, and they do change fast. When they see the potential, or maybe when they're forced, when they don't have any other option. But they I think I just finished on the dot. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Kamel. As always, your talk and your presentation are amazing. Since we met, I think 4 years ago in Ed Universal, I'm always happily surprised by your talk and your presentation. And that's why I'm asking you to share with us your presentation so we can send it to the participants. Many of them are asking. Thanks a lot.
With pleasure, so, absolutely.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you so much.
Kamel.
Merci beaucoup.
Well, Kamel, there is 2 questions. The first one, it's from Professor Rashid Umlin. So Rashid, you can unmute your mic and ask your question.
Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
My question is about the society in general.
Yep.
I think that learning machine and IA are good things, can be good things for people with a lot of difficulties, like in Morocco, Africa, etc. People who are who live exclusion from
Let me just pose the question in English so everybody understands, and then I'll give the answer. So the question is, we all understand the potential and the possibilities that digital transformation and technology and innovation can offer, not just in connectivity, but also in development and societal transformation and so on and so forth. Yet, and also for the proliferation of the democratization of information and so on. Yet it can cause limitations to society, it can cause digital divide, and it can also might widen the inequality and the rights of societies around the world. Nadia, I cannot agree with you more. For every technology, for every concept, for every issue, there are 2 sides. That's why I said the most important thing is the investment in innovation and capital. I didn't say investing in technology. Once you invest in the human capital, which I actually label as the asset, the most important asset of society, but also the investing in innovation, and we've seen that through the proliferation across the region, across the whole region, of smart, young tech entrepreneurs over the past 15 years. that actually can help curb down the issue that you're talking about. I actually included in my presentation, probably in 2 different occasions, that there will be repercussions that are negative out of the digital transformation. Like anything, that has its own side effects, but it's up to us through training and education and the development of society to try to minimize that that reaction or that side effect. And thank you very much for your question.
Thank you, Kamel. So this is the question from Professor Rashid Omli. So first, he's thanking you for your talk. So first question, what are your advice to MENA manager to get value from the digital transition? Second one, which value can they get from this digital transition in terms of business models, etc.?
Thank you, Rashid, for your question. It's very important that as much as I talked about globalization, it has to stay, it has to be restructured, we come up with different model. I'm also very much believer in the impact of values and norms and cultures and beliefs. So we need to adapt those digital transformation platforms to whatever that is needed in our own society. So to maximize the value, we can't just bring in the technology and plug and play. We have to adapt it to whatever that we need in our society. And by the way, even amongst our region, societal needs differ from one country to the other. We share so many common grounds, but there are things that differ from one country to the other. So let me leave you with this thought. I gave you 30 minutes of just sharing some thoughts. I know you have probably better thoughts and better ideas, but I think moving forward, to create value, to realize an impact that is sustainable, that will not be realized by those who are richer, or those who are bigger, or those who are faster, or those who are more competitive, but it's those who can consistently adapt to the changes taking place. That is what and how you are going to be able to create a sustainable value to society through digital transformation. And thank you very much for your question.
Thank you, Kamel. Thanks a lot for your interesting question. I think we're gonna stop right here.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot again for accepting the invitation and being connected from Montreal. I know, I think now it's a little bit early, right? Or maybe it's night.
It's at 5 o'clock in the morning.
5 o'clock. So thanks a lot for being with us. Thanks a lot.
No,
so now let me introduce Professor Ali-Elquammah, Director of ISCAE&UM Business School, Morocco, and the Chairman of the Association of African Business School. He's gonna talk about higher education, distant learning in Africa, from closed to open innovation. What place is there for frugal innovation? Dr. Ali, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much again. I'd like to thank the organizing team, Hind and Salwa, and the leadership of ISCAE&UM6P, Nada Biaz, and also maybe Hisham Habti from UM6P. This is a great topic, and it's kind of hard to actually talk after the talk of Sherif Kamel. By the way, the people who call Kamel as a first name, that's his last name. So if you want to call him with his first name, it's actually Sherif. But anyway, you know, it's really a pleasure to hear you, even though it was like 3-4 a.m. In Canada. My talk is actually going to be on you know, higher education distance learning in Africa, from close to open innovation. What place is there for frugal innovation? This topic is actually very near and dear to my heart, and it actually completes a little bit of what Sherif was talking about. So I'll be talking, it's more of the same approach as Sherif's in terms of talking about the evolution of global business, going from up to the 19th century with land acquisition, colonialism, to the 20th century with free market competition and capitalism being the dominant business model, to a 21st century where we need to focus, and that's what Sherif was talking about, human capital development and entrepreneurship. The players in the 19th century were countries in the 20th century were corporations, and the power came back now to citizens thanks to the internet and social networks. And of course, strength was measured by military power up to the 19th century, by maximizing profits in the 20th century, and companies right now look for noble purposes, look for significance. So as for the management education, the focus was up to the mid-60s on business relevance. From 60s to the 90s on academic excellence on the top of business relevance, but going beyond the 21st century, 2000 and beyond, we're looking at academic excellence, business relevance, and social significance. As far as pedagogical tools used up to the mid-60s, case studies were used. We still used case studies from 60s to the 90s. And of course, from 2000 and beyond, we're actually pushing students into more global learning through internalization and experiential learning. As far as decision making is concerned, for up to the mid-60s, we're talking about more judgmental and intuition in management education. From 60s to 90s is more analytical models, pushing students to be more, to have more critical thinking, design thinking, analytical thinking. And of course, with all what happened in the subprime crisis and everything else, business schools or management education schools focus more on business ethics and sustainability. This is a little fun table I wanted to share with you, and it's not really linked to a time frame. Education 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0 in different, it depends on where we are in the world. In different parts of the world, they're still going to find education 1.0 or 2.0, and in some other parts, more developed countries, you find education 3.0. So the meaning of things is actually was imposed or is imposed in education 1.0. It was imposed and dictated. It is socially constructed in 2.0 and socially constructed and contextually reinvented in 3.0. Smart devices, I mean by smart devices, phones, tablets, and phablets are normally in 1.0 confiscated at the entrance of the classrooms. In 2.0, adopted but with caution. In 3.0, smart devices are everywhere and students live an ambient digital universe. The course or courses are taught by professors to learners. It's actually in education 1.0, you have a professor as a talking head and you have a learner. It's a master-slave kind of relationship. In 2.0 is actually professor to learner and learner to learner. In 3.0, we're looking at professor to learner, learner to learner, learner to professor, and people using IT and IT actually teaching people, and it's actually a 360-degree learning experience. The schools in 1.0 are located in a building, a brick and mortar. In 2.0, we're talking about buildings and online, so it's a brick and click. In 3.0, it's everywhere. That's what Sherif was talking about. It's infused in society, in coffee shops, homes, libraries. You can actually learn anywhere. Parents consider the school as in 1.0 as a daycare. They just want to get rid of their kids. In 2.0, it's actually also a daycare. But in 3.0, it's actually a place for them to learn too. And that's lifelong learning. Even parents need to go back now to do what Sherif called reskilling or upskilling to stay, abreast of what was happening actually in their work environment. Professors are generally in 1.0 licensed professionals or PhD holders. In 2.0, the same. But in 3.0, it's everybody and everywhere. You know, you have someone who was actually a hedge fund manager, Salman Khan, who created the Sal Khan Academy, and he's now actually one of the best actually online or distance learning or e-learning kind of like platforms out there. Hardware and software in schools are purchased at great cost and ignored. And if there are any deans around this virtual table, they would actually, sigh or laugh at this particular experience, because I know that a lot of deans spent a lot of money, but the return on investment on hardware and software was not there, especially for Education 1.0. But now software and hardware are open source and available at low cost at 2.0. And on 3.0, they're available at low cost and they're used purposefully. Industry views graduates as in 1.0 life as assembly line workers. In a 2.0 environment as ill-prepared assembly line workers in a knowledge economy that Peter Drucker and Stephen Covey talked about. And then in the 3.0 as co-workers or entrepreneurs inside the company. We talk about intrapreneurs. So, you know, in continuation of the last slide, we're looking at the modern learner that do most of their work, 30% of them do most of their work somewhere other than employer's location. They take ownership, 70% of them take ownership to search online for solutions to problems and learn new skills related to work. And most of them spend more than 15 hours in media consumption a day. That's what Sherif Kamel talk about actually. So what are the drivers of a global reputation for any higher education school or a business school? There are three of them: leadership, innovation, and growth. We are even starting to talk about a leadership because people shift is happening. So leadership myopia caused by years of operating in the same industry can prevent breakthrough thinking. And I really liked it when Sherif said, let's stop and let's old fashion or old habits away and start like thinking out of the box and thinking innovation. So that's what my second point is. Higher education institutions will benefit if their leaders can shift priorities and generally place innovation at their organization's cultural heart. There is more need of, like I said, a leader shift than a leadership to face relentlessly shifting higher education trends. So what is this innovation we're talking about? It's actually a mindset. Innovation is the act of turning new or existing ideas into reality. It's the ability to perceive the world in new ways, to find hidden patterns, to make connections between seemingly unrelated phenomena, and to generate solutions. So Theodore Levitt puts it best. What is often lacking is not creativity in the idea creating sense. You can find in any of our meetings, people like in brainstorming giving you great ideas, but innovation is actually the action producing sense. You know, you're putting ideas to work. Let me give you an example. France, for instance, is ranked 6th in terms of number of patents registered, but only 24th for innovation. Why such a gap? Well, it's because a lot of their ideas were not put to work and create value. So innovation does not occur suddenly or by chance. It results from long-term iterative processes that integrate ingredients, procedures, and outcomes. It is necessary to encourage HEIs, higher education institutions, to strongly stimulate their long-term capacity to innovate, get out of the fixed mindset where intelligence is static and go in a growth mindset where intelligence can be developed. That's what Sherif mentioned too. That's why I'm gonna keep saying that's what Sherif said. That's what Sherif said. So you know that's because that's what you get when you get after Sherif Kamel's presentation. Anyway, so what is frugal innovation? You know, we're in an academic setup here. We are actually I'm in some kind of a round table of researchers that really like to define things. Etymologically, the word frugal derives from the mid-16th century Latin word frugalis. Frugality is the principle of being economical with the limited resources at hand. Frugal innovation offers the ability to generate considerably more business and social value while significantly reducing the use of scarce resources. It's about a mindset of another mindset of doing more with less, and this came about from developing countries in the mindsets of Jugad in Hindi or Shanzai in Mandarin in China. Frugal innovation gives birth to improvised solutions as a result of ingenuity and cleverness. Value and affordability are the key drivers of frugal innovation. So what are the characteristics of frugal innovation? I mean, how can we call something being frugal as opposed to open innovation or closed innovation or reverse innovation? It's actually low cost and affordability, low cost of use, simply designed and reduced technology complexity. And all these words are going to make sense when we go to actually how to use frugal innovation in education. Low technical content and easy to use for everyone, should be able to work in hostile or degraded environment, just like what we have in Africa, where there is health risk, where there is a lack of power, where there is lack of internet connection and poor infrastructure, right? It's oriented toward the need of the bottom of pyramid without any extra functionality. But we need to note something. The low cost of frugal innovation does not mean low quality or inferior in performance. It is more affordable excellence. Let me give you some examples. The electrocardiograph MAC 800 that was actually designed and conceived in India by GE was a great invention, and it has excellent performance, and it only works with batteries, so we can actually use it anywhere, even in rural areas in large countries, and it costs a fraction of what normally an electrocardiograph costs. And it was so good that it actually got approved by the authorities in the United States to be sold in the United States on the American soil. M-Pesa by Safaricom in Kenya, East Africa, helped bring banking to 58% through mobile banking, while Kenya had only 8% of banking rate through traditional banks. As of December 2018, 32 million Africans have used the M-Pesa platform. Mobile banking solutions by Mobile Nile in Egypt, maybe Sherif would correct me on this, where less than 14% of the population have traditional bank accounts. They're actually trying to get mobile banking solutions to increase that number to a reasonable number there. eGov frugal solutions in Morocco and Gabon made biometric IDs very useful. Now our respective governments have a better information about their citizens, and they can serve them better. Simple and frugal solutions to manage electorate lists in Benin or Benin and Burkina Faso. These are all examples of frugal innovation, and that's why we need to actually think of frugal innovation when we think about innovation in higher education, especially if we talk about the African continent. So it is not sufficient to be a provider. There are about 17,000 educational institutions worldwide providing business education degrees. The number has grown from around 11,000 since 2009, but higher education institutions and business schools in particular, they need to play a role. It's necessary to become a provider of quality and innovative business education. So that's where online delivery of courses come into play. Demand for online delivery of courses is gaining momentum more than ever with COVID-19. That's what Sherif said. Many institutions in every part of the world have started offering part of their courses online on-trail basis blended learning, especially with the start of the pandemic. So where does Africa stand in all this? I'm not, as you can see, I'm not only talking about North Africa, so I'm trying to please Haley here, who actually had asked about focusing on the African continent also. So, like many people say, and like Sherif said in many conferences I've met him at, Africa is the 21st century. In June '94, Nelson Mandela described the promising landscape of the new Africa as follows: we must face the question squarely. Where there is something wrong with the way we govern ourselves, the fault does not come from the other but from ourselves. It is that we are ill-governed. We need to look at our governance institutions, whether it's in higher education or in general in our countries. That's where the problem lies. The problem is within us, not elsewhere, not the colonization, not the West, not this, not that. It's happening in us, and we need to actually try to change and innovate within our souls. So Africa is diverse, 54 countries as opposed to only 3 in North America and 44 in Europe. Approximately 17% the population of the world, as opposed to only 8% in North Africa, 11% in Europe. The youth population is incredibly, encouraging. 41% of Africans have less than 25 years old. It's actually, you find in Africa 2,138 living languages out of 7,000 in the world. And of course, what are the African challenges? It's actually none of the African problems is beyond the means and resources within the continent, but what has largely lacked is proper policy making and implementation. Governance, people. We have challenges in healthcare, security, political stability, in education, but that's all affected by poor governance. We need to look at it that way. And this population growth that we all are proud of, I am not very, hot about it, to be honest with you. And whenever I talk around the world about Africa, I am not proud to say that in the average world fertility rate is 2.5, and in Africa it's 4.7 children. I don't like that, even though it says that there is a force in human capital, but that's a lot more problems than anything else. Look at these figures here. Most of the countries around the world are actually they would be contracting in the future, in the near future, and in Africa, the population is exploding. Including Egypt, 13%. So, but how about the use of technology? Well, we're not really well ranked there too. The International Telecommunication Union, that ranks countries according to their progress in ICT, ranked in 2017 findings show that of the bottom 20 countries worldwide, 17 of them are Africans. Well, there's a huge investment in technology in Africa, but the problem is it's only happening in very few countries. 9 out of 54 are investing 70% of their African GDP. Algeria, Cameroon, Egypt, Kenya, Morocco, Nigeria, Senegal, South Africa, and Tunisia. There is a great potential of energy in Africa. It's enormous, yet only a fraction of it is being currently employed. And we're looking at 43% of Africans not having electricity, which means 600 million people not being able to access electricity. That affects, of course, the industrialization of the continent, and it affects the human development in African countries. Education and training are among the major challenges facing Africa in the coming years. Thus, this idea of using frugal innovation to offer distance learning in order to democratize education. So yeah, there is potential, there is hope. Like Sherif was saying, we need to be optimistic. Africa is rising, the world's fastest growing continent, flourishing economies before COVID-19. Most countries are at peace, record numbers going to school, foreign direct investment tripled during the last decade, from the world's poorest continent to one that is appreciated for its wealth and opportunities. Current population is about 1.3 billion, and it's destined to become 2.5 billion. A lot of African officials, a lot of African, researchers talk about this statistic with pride. I don't see it as being a strength. It's more actually, it's going to add into the vulnerability of Africa, if you ask me. And I can take any question about that. Between 2019 and 2023, 6 of the 15 fastest growing economies will come from Africa. Ethiopia, Rwanda, Cote d'Ivoire, Tanzania, Senegal, and Ghana. I am not taking into consideration I'm not taking into consideration COVID and the repercussions of COVID, is just because we don't have enough elements to talk about that. So Africa's potential, as you can see, Africa is still lagging in terms of internet use. We're only at 22% as opposed to the other continents. But if you look at the screen on the right, it grew from 2% 2005 to 22% 2017, and I'm sure it's going to explode with the mobile industry taking a large place in there. So the population of learners, in terms of students demography, the population of learners enrolled in higher education rose from 6 million in 2000 to 14.5 million in 2017. That's a jump of 1%. Growth in higher education in Africa is driven by growth in the private education sector. So there is really a potential for private investment in education in Africa. And that's why a lot of private investors from around the world are actually putting their money in Africa. Strong development of short cycle training, like in the Ivory Coast, you find more low enrollment rate in higher education, but high enrollment rate in short cycle programs. So what can we do? We can do more and better. A paradigm shift in this education system is needed to allow, on the one hand, the necessary match between training and jobs, and on the other hand, the development of innovative solutions through the use of technology and distance learning. There is a huge need in Africa. Some huge numbers I saw, in different reports, in terms of digital skills and in terms of soft skills. And Sherif touched on that already for the MENA region. Regardless of the progress made, the statistics still tell the story of a significant lack of quality education in Africa. So it's not only about bringing distance learning to Africa, it's bringing quality distance learning in Africa using, some kind of frugal innovation, right? So what do we mean by, frugal innovation? There are actually two areas we need to look at: the higher education in general and long life learning in particular. I split that in 3 different categories. From the technical level, we need to overcome electricity and internet connectivity issues. So we need to look at frugal, innovative solutions to actually bring in distant learning in areas where there is no electricity. We need to find a way. There is a way. If there is a will, there is a way. Do some asynchronous training, simple e-learning platforms, and easy and quick to download content. If you remember, the characteristics of frugal innovation is simplicity, right? And avoiding complexity. Guarantee responsiveness and efficiency in technical support, or have local material and administrative support. It's very important if you're going to offer distant learning in Africa, that you have some learning centers locally. Develop content for Africa designed for M-learning. M-learning is unbelievable. I mean, now the mobile technology, you have countries like South Africa, Egypt, Morocco that surpass 100% mobile membership, you know. As far as content level, the content of distant learning for Africa must be designed according to a systemic approach, considering the environment of actors and partners. So here, frugal innovation has its place too, to look at things in a holistic way, not just in parts. Collaborations or solid partnerships with companies is key. Simple e-learning platforms and easy and quick to download downloaded content. Solve the problem of recognition of distant learning diplomas for graduates. That's very important. You know, if you bring in distant learning to Africa, you need to make sure that the regulation is following up and that there is some kind of recognition of these distant learning diplomas so that the people who graduate can actually get a job with those diplomas. From the educational level, there's a need to consider more human aspects, sociocultural and psycho-educational dimensions. Develop e-learning content adapted to African context. That's very important, and that's what Haley was talking about. Develop, African context, contextual knowledge with African researchers, right? That's very important. And we need some help from the West, of course. As far as distance learning for long life learning using frugal innovation, from the technical level, we need to offer blended e-learning programs for executives and professionals for lifelong learning. Prompt support and expert feedback are considered key success factors for effective online program delivery, and include what we call an asynchronous chat features. It's very important when you talk about distant learning for professionals. Content level opportunities that respond to the country's specific skills gap in sectoral approach. Don't just take programs, distant learning programs to a country without doing any preliminary research on what are the needs of that country. Some countries have needs in agriculture, some other countries have needs in different other sectors, or agribusiness or anything like that. So favor ultra-targeted and actionable training. It's very important that we get short training programs and actionable programs. Provide certificates that are recognized and accepted by major employees. That will help employers. That will help actually these professionals gravitate and go up the ladder. And from the educational level, deliver remote training to teams and not to individuals. I thank you for your attention, and I hope I stayed loyal to the time allocated. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ali, for your interesting talk. I totally agree with you when you say that higher education need to incorporate innovation in their mindset. And I think also that in this time of coronavirus that we are living, it's indeed an opportunity to adopt the concept of frugal innovation in emerging countries to be in higher education 3.0. Thanks a lot, Ali.
Thanks.
So I want to just, maybe we still have time just for one quick question. Is there any question? So thank you, Ali. Thanks a lot for accepting the invitation.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm very glad to stick around for any questions or any comments or concerns.
All right. Okay. Can you please share with us your presentation also, Ali, so we can send it to? Actually, we're gonna put all the material on the website of MENACIS2020.
Yeah, there is no problem with that. I'll be glad to share it with you.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
I will send it right after this.
Thanks a lot.